Welcome to SpanReads, not your typical rereads podcast, a 17-shard series where we reread the Cosmere and are giant nerds about it. Today, we will be talking about Bands of Mourning and looking at it from a Cosmere-wide perspective. Joining me is Mish.
Hello, also known as firstRainbowRose.
Also joining me is Ian.
Hey, I'm your writer.
And also joining me is Rosemary.
Hi, I'm Kaymyth.
And I am Jessie, or Lady Lameness. Today, we will be talking full Cosmere spoilers up to and including Rhythm of War, which was the most recent book to be released. So if you're watching this in the future and you're wondering, why aren't you guys talking about Lost Metal? It's because we don't have it yet. And we are jealous of you all for having it currently when you watch this. I guess we might have gotten it before you, but
we are
either
also
way,
jealous of our future selves.
Yes, very jealous of our future selves.
Those who are wondering, but why aren't you talking about this thing? We are jealous of you for knowing about the thing that we are not talking about.
We are talking to you from the past. Hello, future.
Hello, future
you will
me.
hear about
Oh wait,
this in
that's
the
a
future
YouTuber.
from our perspective.
Oh,
Time is a weird soup, and so
Very
who
wibbly wobbly.
knows
Wibbly
anything?
wobbly, timey wimey.
Yes.
you know what's funny is Brandon doesn't do a lot of time travel, at least at this point. Like, there
I'm
are
He's
not
not
upset by
explicitly said
this.
he's not going to handle it in the Cosmere because he doesn't want to deal with it.
I mean,
in the
That's
Cosmere.
fair.
yeah, it's a mess.
That's fair. I
You-
wouldn't want.
No matter how well you do time travel, someone is going to criticize something because they think it works differently than you do.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to do time travel in a story that's not about the time travel.
So, wider Cosmere implications.
So I feel like we need to start with Kelsier, guys.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kelsier. Kelsier.
Because also the difference between if we started with this point after Bands of Mourning and Secret History had been released versus after Rhythm of War has been released,
Yeah.
there's
so
a few more
we know
implications.
Kelsier's Thydakar. Kelsier has been interfering frickin' everywhere that he can get his little fingers on.
Yep.
And he still hasn't managed to get off of Scadrial, but he's got minions.
And assuming that the timeline Brandon has most recently talked about, I believe, is still correct, where Era 2 falls somewhere between the end of Stormlight 5 and 6 or 7, I think.
originally it was like, it takes place between 5 and 6. Like, because there is a in-world a gap of 10, 15-ish years potentially. But he's somewhat walked that back and says it might be as late as Stormlight 7 or 8.
Well, going off that, in Rhythm of War, Mraize does say that they know how to get highly invested people off of out of systems. They just don't have the means to do it, which really sounds like Kelsier knows he can and how to get off of Scadrial. He just can't currently do it.
Because probably there aren't any pools to,
Well, I think it's more than that.
Yeah, I wonder if he
He's
simply
tied
hasn't
to
gotten
the-
hold of his skeleton, his own skeleton yet.
It seems to be more than
Or-
that, though, because it seems to be any highly invested people. So even Radiants would have problems just up and going to a different
Well,
system.
Oh, so
I think it's
this may
because
not even.
they're Spren. It's they could leave, but they would have to leave their Spren behind,
Sure.
which is
Yeah,
not
'cause-
something they'd want to do.
Because Kelsier is more than just a highly invested person. He's a cognitive shadow, and that causes other problems.
Yeah.
That means he's more strongly linked to his planet than average.
Yeah. But the Returned are also cognitive shadows. Vasher, it's very obviously not on his homeworld anymore.
That's
So it is possible.
But it begs the question, where the hell is he? Because he's still in Scadrial, but he doesn't seem to be in the south anymore from the way that they talk about it, is that he kind of turned up, gave him some stuff, and then he buggered off.
I mean,
So
for
where
all
is
we
he?
know, he's hanging out in the middle of Elendel, just chilling, doing his
definitely
Kelsier thing, and
he has
no
an
one
apartment
knows
there.
he's there.
Mhm.
I mean, just because we haven't seen him on screen doesn't mean he's not nearby.
And it's just when we find out that we have seen him on screen and he's been one of these side characters all along, and then Brandon just hasn't told us.
Is Kelsier all alone again? Maybe.
He just needs a bit of a hood, hide half his face because giant spike through an eye, kind of noticeable.
yeah.
Just eye patch. That'll hide that right up, right?
I
At
mean,
least he has hair and can hide the back,
Mm.
unlike Marsh, who just has 2 spikes and a bald head.
Could you though? Could you like chop off the back, have your hair, have it sunk far enough into your eye socket that like an eye patch could cover it? Like,
Probably.
Like, just get Mosh to punch him in the face and like push it further back, and then they can match.
How big Kelsier's spike is, because it doesn't necessarily have to be the size of an Inquisitor spike. It just
Yeah.
needs to be big enough
to see.
to staple him to the body, essentially. And most of the reason Inquisitor spikes were so big was because the Lord Ruler wanted them to look intimidating.
Mhm.
So it doesn't have to be that big. So maybe he just is using an eye patch to cover it up.
Also, fun fact, hemalurgy does not make you bald. That is a word of Brandon that exists. Just gonna leave it
Okay,
there.
good to know, I guess.
Well, it's like all the Steel Inquisitors are bald. And so somebody asked, like, is that because they shave their head or does hemalurgy make them bald?
I mean,
It's one of my favorite words of Brandon's because it's so funny.
that's fantastic. But it's a good thing to know too.
But I do wonder, we don't know where Kelsier got the knowledge for the Southerners, but how is that going to play in like the Ghostbloods and Roshar and the wider Cosmere going forward if he's had that knowledge for what, like 300 years up till this point, and could just give that to people potentially, depending on what's actually required of it? He could have spread
Yeah.
this a lot further than the Southerners, I think.
I almost wonder if he somehow guilted or manipulated Harmony into giving him some of that information, because we know Harmony doesn't like hemalurgy, and this is bypassing some of that. And if Kelsier was going to go and start just hemalurging the crap out of everything, Harmony's like, no, do this instead. You're going to do a lot less damage. And maybe, I mean, that would at least explain where he figured something out that no one else knows.
There's also the possibility that it's not entirely Scadrian magic.
I think Ben has a big theory that like there's non-Scadrian magic involved. But Kelsier did hold preservation for a while.
That's true.
So he might know things
Mhm.
just from that.
Enough to make him dangerous and start asking the right questions. So like when he does experiment, he actually has a direction that is useful. But I don't think he would spread the use of medallions widely through the Cosmere.
I don't think Kelsier seems like the type of character where he would selfishly guard anything he can. Like he chats up with Spook because Spook is somebody who he knows, and Spook is willing to chat with him. But I'm willing to bet that he doesn't. I think Spook shares more of the information than Kelsier does, because Kelsier seems like the type of character where he's like, I'm keeping this for me so I can do the cool stuff and you can't stop.
See, I do disagree with that. He would give it to the people he trusts, which is like his crew.
That's fair.
So it's like he wouldn't sell it to like, oh, you random person from another planet. He's not going to give it to him. Like his people, like, yeah, I don't think he would have any issue. So it's like Southern Scadrians like reversed event engineered a lot of their technology from what he gave them. But in the Ghostbloods presumably would have access to it.
At least some of them.
Don't think most of the Ghostbloods would. I think that it's probably a lot more likely that there's
remember, there is someone who is ethnically Southern Scadrian who is part of the Ghostbloods on Roshar.
Yeah.
And it's entirely possible that whoever she's descended from brought that knowledge with them from Scadrial. And that is how the Ghostbloods have that.
Yeah, like
someone that Kelsier trusted, 100 years ago who moved off planet and has brought that information with.
Yeah.
My brain just went down the rabbit hole of what if Spook is alive and in the Ghostbloods and one of the higher up members?
I'd be
You look
annoyed,
so
but
displeased.
I don't like Spook to begin with, so
I don't think Spook seems like the type where at the end of the day he'd be like, no, I just want to be dead. However, Breeze's wife, I could totally see her. Yeah, I could totally see her being the type. Breeze would be like, nah, I'm good. But I could see.
I don't think Kelsier would have recruited her though, because she's a noble. Like
that's fair.
Yeah, and like when I say like give it to the Ghostbloods, I mean in the general terms of like the intergalactic Cosmere organization. The people on Roshar may or may not have medallions. I don't know how effectively they can be used at this point elsewhere, just in terms of resources. But like his core team that like works directly with him, almost certainly.
And of course, if someone on Roshar got hold of a medallion, they would just like, oh, this is an interesting Fabriel. I wonder what it does. They're just going to say, oh, this is another kind of Fabriel. And
somebody give Navani medallions, please. She'll have a field day.
Then you're going to have all of the science.
Well, it's like, that's if they can even get it to work. Because it does require knowledge. Like, you have to know what it is for it to function. And it's like, oh, put this on you and it makes you able to store your weight or like change your weight.
Wit knows.
Wit knows.
And he would 100%, he might very well tell Yasna if she poked hard enough.
Oh, yeah.
But especially if she poked in the right place. But
how much knowledge do you need? Like, do you need to be able to understand Allomancy and Ferugmy? Do you just need to know what that specific ability is? Like, there are questions.
And we should also talk about the fact that Chris was on planet and never got to find out about these battalions on screen. She talked to Wax, but had no idea.
Oh, I don't think she's leaving Scadrial quite yet. She's gonna know. Like, as soon as there is a giant airship in the sky over Elendel, she's got to figure things out real quick.
Naz, clear my calendar for the next decade.
Well, that's actually assuming she doesn't already know.
Yeah.
Because if the South has had connections to the cognitive realm, it's like she might have already known. But one minor point I do want to point out is that this is actually the first on-screen appearance of Chris in the Cosmere.
Since White Sand.
White Sand was published after this.
Okay, so you're thinking in publication order, not chronological order.
Yes, in publication order, this is the first appearance of Chris in the Cosmere.
Unless you count the Ars Arcana.
Yes, but at this point, I'm not even sure we knew that Chris was the Ars Arcana writer yet. I don't remember.
We knew for a while. I know we knew for a while.
But it's because we've known for so long. I don't remember when the exact.
I'm pretty sure it was before Shadows and Bands were published, because I'm pretty sure I had that knowledge before.
But still, on screen is different to has written a thing.
Yeah.
This is the first time we get to see her, not her.
Yeah. Then we see her in Secret History. Then we get her actual first appearance in the Cosmere, which is White Sand Volume 1.
Of course, the other really big Cosmere thing is what Sazed is dealing with.
Oh, yeah.
And
the planet is under siege.
Yeah. Which, by the way, that imagery is so cool.
It is.
So what are you guys' thoughts on that? Like,
it's something autonomy. 100%.
Yeah. Trell is linked to autonomy or is an avatar of autonomy. I'm 100% in Ian's corner on that.
Yeah, it's like no doubt in my mind.
I could kind of see the argument for Odium, but then Rhythm of War came out and I very much stuck with the autonomy camp. That is not enough of a time jump. No, sorry, not time jump. That is not enough of a turnaround time to make that work.
And that stupid foreman named Trell in White Sand. Like, Brandon, I'm very curious what the explanation is, because if there isn't an explanation, I'm going to be furious.
Maybe autonomy just needed a name and ran into the guy one day. I was like, I like your name, mate, and stole it and used it. And that's the explanation.
Side note, but that's the most Australian thing I've ever heard you say.
Well, see, someone said ages and ages ago that I'm losing my Australian accent on I can't even remember what Sharkcast it was. It was in the comments. So I now have to sprinkle it in more and more.
You are not losing your accent, I promise.
It's natural that it'll fade somewhat because you'll get used to hearing American English. And
it's
just say shrimp on the Barbie and you're fine.
See, you're now banned from ever going to Australia because no one says shrimp.
Prawns.
Prawns on the Barbie, mate. Prawns.
Whatever you call them, they're delicious.
These are going to be great outtakes.
Oh, yeah.
But also, in terms of the Grand Cosmere, I've mentioned it before, I love the conversation with Wax and Harmony at the end. It gives our first in-world exploration of the Cosmere afterlife, really. that like, oh, like the body returns to like the earth, like your soul like returns to the spiritual realm, or like I think he refers to it as the Cosmere, and then like your mind goes somewhere that even I cannot follow. It's like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Harmony's really doing the god thing.
Yeah, like he's actually good at the job, unlike every other shard.
Every other shard doesn't care.
Cultivation seems to be doing all right.
But like she doesn't have the personal touch. Like she's picky and choosy with the people she interacts directly with, and like she has ulterior motives at all times. I love her. She's amazing. Not as good as a god as Harmony.
Yeah, she very much seems like she's a manipulator, but she doesn't have an interest in looking over the planet Roshar. She just wants to manipulate the people that she's interested in.
Mm-hmm. Like in Shadows of Self, like Ben was on, and we had our conversation about Ben really doesn't like what Harmony did to Wax. And it's like his I'm literally going to message him about this as soon as we're done recording, because like his perception of what Harmony's doing, I feel like is like what cultivation would do. Like I think he's attributing too much of like cultivation's mindset and how she treats people to Harmony.
I can see that.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, Harmony was not fully prepared for what he was going to face, because he's just like, okay, I'm going to fix the planet and then everything's going to be fine. And oh, crap, there's a lot more of these. Mm-hmm. There are a lot more shards out there, and some of them are poking my planet.
And also we were talking last time about, because I know that I have the idea that Sazed looks at what Harmony is in a very specific way of balancing ruin and preservation, and I don't necessarily agree with this, but whatever it is, I think he's running into problems with it now that he's got that outside interference. And it's like, well, how do you balance preserving and runation of things when something is coming in to try and destroy everything? You can't keep that balance in the same way that he could when he had free reign to do what he wanted with no one there to keep checks on him, I guess. And he had all that choice. And now he actually has to kind of choose one or the other, presumably more often than he wants to do.
So the question is, how long has it been attacking is my question. Like, was it there when he immediately took up the mantle? Or is it a new edition, or is it somewhere in between?
In Shadows of Self, the Khandra say that he's been more distracted. He's obviously got some sort of future sight, because like Preservation have very good future sight. So he's been setting things up in the same way Preservation tried to. I have a small thing that's just like a small fun thing. The scene where Wayne is changing Marisai's clothing so they could go to the graveyard. I just had such Adeline vibes from it, from when he changes his clothes on the ship in Shadesmar and Oathbringer. And I just want them to meet and talk about tailoring now. And just talk about fashion. That would be a very fun conversation to see. And see if they can like outdo each other.
Wayne and the Cosmere as a whole would be fascinating to see his adaptability and how he would adapt to all the different characters.
Terrifying.
I also want to see Wayne.
Truly terrifying prospect.
Yeah. I also now want to see Wayne and Galadon.
I don't think they would like Galadon's too much of a grump.
Exactly. He would not put up with it. And I would love, he would just shut Wayne down. And
that would do would make Wayne even more determined to bother him.
Yep. Exactly. Oh, it would be, I'm a little bit of a terrible person, but I think that watching those two go at it, it would end with Scadrial like a wasteland. Oh,
other interesting thing that we can talk about. This book also marked the first time a non-Brandon human being wrote prose for the novel, which is Isaac wrote the Nikki Savage story in the broadsheet, which does include
that amazing cat name.
It includes an amazing cat name. It also includes Naz and Hoyd, and also a gun that shoots shades that may or may not actually exist. Don't know, but
Well, Nas comes from Shadows
Threnody.
of Silence. Yeah.
Yeah, he comes from Threnody. So
So
if it exists, he would certainly have it.
So
So yeah, that
none-
fits. It's
The
yeah.
description-
I'm really looking forward to the possibility of Isaac doing some co-writing in Mistborn.
oh yeah.
Someday. That's going to be a lot of fun.
is this the book where we had the advertisement for the talking silverware? Or was that the last one?
I think it's this one.
Because everybody always takes that as being a sign of awakened objects. I'm wondering if that's them trying to locate Nightblood, because clearly they have no idea where Nightblood is. And
Yeah.
so
And someone's got a bounty out on him.
yeah,
It's-
so a lot of people thought that
Vivenus.
like I've seen a lot of people saying, "Oh, well that's clearly a sign of, awakened objects and things." And a lot of people reference Nightblood. I wonder if that's a subtle way of, "Hey, if you run across this like sword that happens to talk, we're looking for it."
We're going to couch it in terms of making it not so obvious we're looking for just a sword.
Yep.
Possibly, because like that is also Chris and Naz.
Yeah. I think it says
And like I don't think there's like any one. I don't think it's just to search for anything they do. Like has multiple goals.
That's
like,
fair.
Because like they might be trying to see like we've seen investiture develop sentience on other planets. Like do invested metals do something similar? Like
That's true. They might be going, well, we know this happens here. So if someone puts something into a metal mind enough, does it start to talk? Let's find out.
I'm now curious about that too. Could you accidentally invest a metal mind enough that it starts to think for itself?
You'd have to be a compounder to even hope to make it happen, but
yeah.
maybe?
I would imagine at this point, if it was going to happen, the Lord Ruler probably would have done it.
I mean, maybe.
Maybe, and then he immediately melted that metal down and destroyed whatever he created. Like,
He's like, oh, no.
Like,
My lives
no.
weren't enough.
No.
I cannot deal with this.
Nope.
Yeah.
I've already
He doesn't
got
know
one
moral
voice in my
compunctions.
head. I don't need another one.
100% would not put up with that.
No.
Of course, that might be also their way of trying to get hold of a Pathian earring. Like, oh, I hear a voice sometimes when I put this earring in.
That's true.
That's
Yeah.
noticeable.
So it's interesting that there's a few different things that
Yeah.
one little advertisement can be.
Mhm.
And that's just how clever Chris is.
Yep.
I hope we see more out of her in the next book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I just remembered something else. We alluded it to earlier that one of the Ghost Bloods on Roshar is of Southern Scadrian descent, specifically Iyadel, who has the weird carapace mask that's grown into her face. But this is the book that we find out like she's like specifically like of Hunter descent, because there's Marasi like is like thinking back to the conversation with Alec and references like the hunters who somehow grow into their masks, and she didn't understand how that worked. And I'm like, oh, we know. And it's terrifying.
Sounds like a really good way to get the nasty infection.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's kind of just carapace at that point, right?
I mean, if they're having it grow into their skin, though.
And it's like, I don't think they're using carapace on Scadrial.
And that's
Yeah. No.
So it's like, and it's interesting. Like we saw Iyadel like in Words of Radiance, no idea that she's a Southern Scadrian, like not even a possibility in our minds. Then we get this book and it recontextualizes her entire character.
Oh, yeah. I remember the lead up of I think book 2 is the one that has the broadsheet about people with marbled skin, and everybody was like, oh look, this is proof of Parshendi on Scadrial, and everybody was absolutely positive. And then we get bans and it's like, just kidding.
Yeah, it's the visitors from other worlds with like this very inhuman face because it's a Mac.
Yep.
And like the person who reported it didn't know that. So
Yep.
it's like the little like Easter eggs like that. Like, oh, like sometimes it's a red herring. Sometimes it's just like you're not going to know what this means until like 5 books from now. It's always fun to like get that because it makes rereading books so much more rewarding. That like
Yeah.
I mean, I know some people are concerned about how much interconnection we're starting to get from the Cosmere books, but it just makes me more excited to keep reading.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm confident that Brandon will always be careful of, if it is your first book that you've ever picked up, he wants to make sure you can enjoy it just as much if it's the first book that you've picked up as you can if you are like entrenched from the beginning.
Yeah. But if you pick Rhythm of War as your first book, you're making wrong decisions.
That's true.
Well, that would be true of any long series if you decided to start with book 4.
Yeah.
I don't know. It works Dresden Files.
Oh,
But
God, I
if
hope
you-
so, because I'm skipping some of them.
But Dresden Files is a little bit more episodic.
Yeah, I know. I
Imagine-
was.
Harry Potter 4 Harry Potter is very episodic, but even then, if you pick up
Yeah.
Goblet of Fire for your first book, you're gonna have a bit of a bad time.
It's fine.
So that reminds me, like as a small child, I picked up book 4 in a series and I did not know it was book 4 in a series until like years later, where I actually found the rest of the series. I'm like, oh, okay, it helps that the main character had amnesia for most of the book and didn't remember a lot of things. So yeah.
What series was this?
This was the Dark is Rising series by Susan Cooper.
I haven't read those ones.
It's good. It has a very weird emotional place in my life because it doesn't have the happiest of endings. It's a very melancholy ending, but it's a very good series in my opinion. It's like very foundational to like small Ian.
It's a very. What were you gonna say, Jess?
I also did that when I was a kid, except I think it was the second book. And I don't know what the series is called, but the book was called Crystal Mask. But I think the way the series was set up is the books were still relatively separate to each other. Like they weren't quite episodic, but they looked at like different peoples in the book instead of following like a set of main characters. So it was mostly okay, but yeah, that was not the first book in that series. It was fine in the end. Like I loved the book, but it was a bit confusing to get into. That probably should have tipped me off, but I don't know. I was like 7, so it didn't. Anything else?
I have nothing.
Yeah, I think we've come to the end of the road of things we're going to think of in this sitting before we, click end to record and
pick up the lost metal.
Later go, oh,
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you for watching, everybody. You can find us at 17shard.com for all your news, discussion, theories, and fun that you could ever want. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud. Leave us a what was that word? Leave us a review on iTunes, subscribe on YouTube, and support us on Patreon. See you all next time. Bye.
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 Bye.